Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another great edition of Pro Bono Institute's Pro Bono Happy Hour. I'm David Lipscomb, Director of Strategic Communications for PBI. The Pro Bono Happy Hour is our new series of podcasts in which we highlight Law Firm Pro Bono Challenge signatories and Law Firm Pro Bono project members. In this edition, PBI Communications Specialist Yvette Crenshaw interviews Alison King, Pro Bono Counsel at Kaye Scholer. Alison spoke to us about the structure of the firm's pro bono program, best practices, and what's on the horizon at Kaye Scholer regarding pro bono. As always, we hope you're comfortable wherever you may be, whether that's mid-commute, on your lunch break, or simply working at your desk, and we hope you enjoy the interview.
Hi, Alison. Thanks for joining us today.
I'm happy to join.
Yeah, thank you. We'll just start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself and the pro bono program at your firm.
Well, my name is Alison King. I'm the pro bono counsel at Kaye Scholer. I'm also the co-chair of the firm's pro bono committee and have been for the last 12 years or so. We have a very active pro bono committee with associates, counsel, and partners who essentially act as a sounding board for our attorneys to be able to provide feedback on our existing pro bono program and also to promote our existing program. And many of them take on leadership roles where they actually run our different practice areas within pro bono. Our main practice areas are the Death Penalty Defense Project, the Immigration Project, the Transgender Name Change Project, and the Tax Exempt Organizations Project. Those are the matters that most of our attorneys are involved with at some point during their development as junior associates. And we use those different projects to run programs through the year, but also specifically for summer associates in the summer. It's not the only way to get involved in pro bono at Kaye Scholer. There are many ways to come to the firm and be involved right away, either as a first year or as a lateral. And we're really always happy when lateral attorneys come to the firm and they bring great and amazing pro bono matters and relationships with them. So we're always trying to get to know our laterals so we can make sure we're supporting their work. And for our attorneys, it's really a matter of trying to find the best pro bono that we can for them, to try and find matters that have the biggest impact on the community, but that are the most appropriate for our attorneys to be involved with. Particularly, I always joke to our junior associates that if you really have a passion for pink unicorns, then I will find the best pink unicorn legal services organization in the country and try and get matters from them. So it's really a very responsive program to the needs of our attorneys, and we really enjoy sort of working with people to find work that fits with what they want out of pro bono.
Awesome. And do you guys have a professional development team? How are these attorneys trained, or how do you work with them to develop core competencies?
So we do have we call it talent development here at Kaye Scholer, and pro bono is a part of our talent development team. My administrator, Ellie Spiegel, who's the manager of pro bono and community service, is part of the talent development team. And we work to provide trainings for our associates. But mostly, the best way to get involved and to train our attorneys in pro bono is to be involved in a project. We like to bring the expertise in-house so that we do the training and the supervising and the mentoring from Kaye Scholer attorney to Kaye Scholer attorney for two reasons. The first and primary reason for me is to have less of an ask of the legal services partner. We want matters from them, but we don't want to take their staff time in doing the representations as much. We certainly ask them as the experts in the matters as to provide assistance, but we build up a relationship over time with our legal services partners so that they know what work we're capable of, and we do that work sort of very, very in-house and internally. The second reason we do it is because I want to make sure that every attorney that represents any client, any firm client, does so at the best of their ability, and that we provide all of our clients with the highest level of legal work, and that's because we supervise our attorneys. So it's very important that we do it that way. And then for matters that are not within our projects, then for instance, I took on a new matter for me. I generally don't do immigration work because I myself am an immigrant, and it gets a little too close to home. But this summer I took on a U visa for a transgender client, a person of color who was the victim of a crime and was helping the DA's office with a conviction of the perpetrator. And it was an incredibly stressful summer for me as well as for the legal services people because I needed a lot of hand-holding. But we went into the relationship, they knew that I had never done one before, and they also knew that once we take something in and build a practice area, it's only a beginning of the relationship stressor and eventually becomes easier and easier.
Awesome. That's awesome. So how is pro bono celebrated at the firm? Do you guys have an award ceremony? How do you guys celebrate pro bono within your attorneys?
We share the victories sort of over time in our Kaye Scholer Daily, we call it. It's the internal newsletter that comes electronically and shows up on the intranet site. It's the same way we celebrate victories and wins for our paying clients. And I really like, as part of the reason, we have a very large pro bono committee, in part because I like pro bono people to understand they're not the only ones in the firm. So we've really tried to create a community of people who do pro bono and who know that others do it as well. And then at the end of the year, the beginning of the year, we identify the people at the end of the year and then have a big party in sort of February where we have a dinner and an award ceremony where everyone gets a really lovely award and everyone then puts them in their offices, and it's wonderful. We also ask one person outside of the firm to come and receive the same award, the same Kaye Scholer Pro Bono Award, because of their commitment to pro bono, either as legal services professionals or as in-house clients who support our pro bono work in various ways. So it's been a very fun event. We try to make it as social as possible because it's meant to celebrate the community of people that do pro bono.
Segue. It sounds like you guys are doing a lot of partnering, as you mentioned, with the legal services organizations as well as corporate legal departments. So is that something that you guys are doing a lot of? Or I know you mentioned in your in the case that you took on with the transgender case that you worked with a legal services provider to handle that case. So is that something that you guys are doing often, or?
We don't really do pro bono unless we have a legal services organization involved in the matter. So yes, we have different types of relationships with different legal services organizations, but we generally take a matter from a legal services organization, and then over time that team sort of becomes the leaders of that project area, and then they're good at identifying teams to put together when the legal services comes to them and says, you guys have done so many of these cases now and we have one that's kind of tricky, would you be willing to take it on? And that's considered a win from Kaye Scholer's point of view, because the tricky ones are the fun ones. Like, those are the ones that are exciting, and I mean, I'm not going to say that doing standard pro bono is not exciting. Of course it is. It's the reason we do it. But to get one that's technically difficult, that litigators love that. That's what they dream of. But we would not take that on if we didn't know and really have a good relationship with the legal services organization. So that there's definitely a continuing relationship. And what I like to do is have my project leaders do a lot of that one-on-one relationship building with the legal services organization's staff attorney. So I certainly know the executive director or their pro bono person, but it's the day-to-day, for instance, with, I'm trying to think, we've been doing our immigration project. Well, we got an immigration client from another office, from some other organization, and it was a difficult one. And so we reached out to Human Rights First to ask for help. It hadn't come to us from Human Rights First, but we have a long relationship with them, and they were willing to step in and provide assistance.
What advice would you give yourself, let's say, when you first started? So knowing what you know now, what advice do you think you would give yourself now?
Well, this advice is actually very particular to my firm in that Kaye Scholer has a long history of supporting death penalty pro bono, and the partners are rightfully very proud of that work, as am I. It's a long-standing commitment to the issue. And but when I came into this role, pro bono at Kaye Scholer was really being driven by the partners. You didn't really take on a pro bono matter unless a partner suggested that it would be a good one to work on. It was just very much about the partners. And when I took on the role as the co-chair of the pro bono committee, I really wanted to encourage more of the associates in counsel to take leadership roles on pro bono matters. So I identified a number of areas, many of which I talked about, immigration, tax-exempt organizations. We were doing SSI work for a while. So we'd really started focusing on those areas and reaching out just to counsel and associates to run those matters and manage those matters. I sort of forgot to include the partners in that information chain, and so the partners really didn't understand what our pro bono program was all about. So I think I would have told myself, 2 or 3 years into this gig as the co-chair of the pro bono committee, that I really should get more partners to take leadership roles in the different projects, and we have done that. We learned our lesson. So it was because when I first took the job, I had heard from our partners all the different concerns they had about pro bono, and so I created a structure to address those concerns. Things like that maybe there wasn't appropriate supervision and that we didn't really have a handle on what matters people were doing. And so I said, no, we're creating these, supervision silos, I guess you'd call them, or project areas. And I was addressing all of those issues, but I hadn't been reporting to the partners about those solutions. And I don't mean officially reporting, like standing up in a big room, but just the conversations that happen in law firms. I should have made more people kind of aware of what we were doing so they could talk about it sort of in the odd conversation in the hall or in the lunchroom.
Speaking of, communication with leadership, are there any best practices? Do you have any tips? I mean, of course, you mentioned that just opening the lines of communication that's something that you learned over the course of your time in your position. But do you have any best practices for maybe someone else who's just starting out and not sure where to start with opening those lines of communications with management?
I think that, yes, I think the best thing for a person who's starting out is to break down communication by audience. So there's the sort of externally facing communications about what your firm is doing and sort of talking about how proud you are of the different wins that you've had and just discussing your program. And some of that is useful internally.
And do you, in order to maybe garner more support, do you guys invite them? I'm sure you probably invite them to the awards ceremony, but do they come? Do they take interest in seeing what you're doing?
We invite the members of the pro bono committee and of the executive committee of the firm to our dinner, and then most of the partners who come to our dinner are those opinion leaders and are themselves pro bono leaders. So I mean, as I said, we've had a long history of pro bono, and I've been at the firm a long time. So I think that if you're new, and I don't know, sometimes the first time I invited the partners, one of the partners really showed me how it should be done. He made a point of going around from table to table to ask the associates, what have you been working on this past year? How has it been? And so he literally worked the room. And I thought, well, that's of course what every partner should do. And any time there's a firm event, particularly when we're celebrating something that we value, it should be that the partners walk around and say, what are you working on? How is it? So I actually do give a little primer to the partners coming to the dinner saying, please do your best to follow these good practices of asking the people at your table to talk about the pro bono that they do, but also to talk about the pro bono that you do.
What do you see on the horizon for your pro bono program? Are you guys interested in maybe introducing new areas or anything like that?
I'm always interested in sort of making sure that the firm is involved in something that would be of interest to our attorneys, and I never know what that's going to be. So it's a matter of making sure, and also it's important, I think, for all the firms and their pro bono professionals to understand what the next issues are for the legal services organizations in this country. So after Ferguson, quite a few people have been concerned about fees and fines and racial equity and those issues. And I do think that that's going to be a greater focus for a number of different programs in ways and how to provide support for that work. It's, of course, you work with the big organizations that do civil rights work, and then you work with the organizations in your community doing direct representation. And it's continuing that conversation always about, here we are, we're interested, how can we help? But don't get in the way. Like, don't ever say, ooh, that looks like a cool one, let's do that one, and then requiring the people who are on the ground doing the work to be distracted. So I think it's always an ongoing conversation about what can we do to provide support to the work that you're doing and how can we be part of it. But there's also the firm, Kaye Scholer. I think we continue to sort of focus on those project areas because they do lend themselves easily to being managed and to being replicated. But then if someone comes and wants to do sort of a massive impact litigation with Legal Aid Society of New York, then we make that happen. So I don't know that there's a topic that I see coming up as sort of our next area. It's a bit more organic than that. I think my job is to go out and see what there is and sort of talk about ways in which to provide support, and then to come back to the firm and say, these are the opportunities, and then follow the opportunities that are identified by my attorneys as ones they're interested in doing.
Sure. Well, that's always exciting, just to, like you said, get out there and see what's going on and kind of talk to your team about it and go from there. So
the best part of my job is that I get to work with and support people who are incredibly passionate about what they do. And working with passionate people, whether they're in the firm or in a legal services organization, is one of the most wonderful things that you can do. I mean, it just is such a happy place to be. Honestly, I sound a little cheesy, but it really is about, working with someone who has a vision and who is really dedicated to something and saying to them, let us help you make that easier. Let's help you get that case to be able to represent that client. If you have a particular interest in mental health issues, let's make sure that you're talking to organizations that do mental health issues, and that associate in my firm can then actually connect with something that means something to them. And I can also go to a public defender and say we want to be involved in somehow sort of identifying this fines and fees issue and support the work that you're doing. And sort of the look they give you is like, really? And it's like, no, this is really what we want to do. So that's the benefit of this job that a lot of us really appreciate and love doing.
Well, it sounds very rewarding, and
it is.
I'm not going to take up too much more of your time. I want to thank you again for taking time out again to speak with us. We really appreciate it, and I wish you guys the best of luck with everything you have coming up. And before you know it, your dinner will be here.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Alison King of Kaye Scholer for joining us and sharing her pro bono experiences. To listen to more podcasts in this series or learn about additional pro bono resources, visit www.probonoinst.org/podcast. If you're interested in having your firm featured on the Pro Bono Happy Hour, please email us at probono@probonoinst.org. Just to give you a little heads up, the Pro Bono Happy Hour will be taking off next week for Thanksgiving, but we will see you for a brand new episode on December 3rd. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on December 3rd on the Pro Bono Happy Hour.